Divorce is an ugly, mean, gross process, or is it? Let's talk about that today. We have an amazing guest here on Mindset Matters More. So today's guest is someone who's having the honest conversations a lot of women desperately need, especially when life doesn't go according to plan. And of course, it never goes according to plan, right? Molly Rubesh is a relationship coach, author, speaker, and blended mom of four who helps women navigate marriage, divorce, heartbreak, self-worth, and rebuilding after life cracks you open a little. What makes Molly's work so powerful is she's lived it. After walking through divorce, grief, and the process of rebuilding her own life, she left corporate America to help women create deeper meaning, healthier relationships, and a life that actually feels aligned. And what I love about her approach is it's real. It's no pretending, no perfect girl energy, just honest conversations about healing, motherhood, connection, and becoming stronger through change. This one's going to be an amazing conversation, so stick around. Molly, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so excited to talk to you because when I read, your webpage, your bio, everything about you, I was like, I have to talk to her because the approach, I think, I'm just going to dive right in here. So, what is even divorce coaching? Because I have an idea, but I would like to step into how would somebody know to even approach a divorce coach?
You know, so many people suffer in silence in their marriages, and they kind of tell their friends or they kind of tell their family, but our friends and our family are so biased. And so they become mama bear, and then they start to tell you like what their fears are, that they're worried for you, or they give you advice based on what they know about your husband or your partner. And so it's so clouded and they can't give you unbiased support. So people know to hire an attorney when they're getting a divorce, but they don't necessarily think about having somebody that can hold them emotionally, mentally, spiritually and help get through the process because calling your friend over and over and over again and like saying the same thing kind of wears them out and then people feel guilty or telling your mom you don't want to tell them because then she worries too much. So a divorce coach really can hold that space for you and actually see what is on the other side of this really hard situation versus living in the fear with you. Like they can help you get to that lighter side, that process, and kind of hold space for that vision.
You bring up a good point about who do you talk to when there's trouble in paradise?
Yeah.
We're all humans. Things are going to happen. Somebody says something, somebody does, and it becomes like you know, I don't want to go to my friends to complain. I don't want to go to my family to rant. But like, who can you talk to? Who are the people who are like feel safe? And it feels almost logical to find a coach because they can remain impartial. And it's like that's the function is to help you process this emotionally to be able to interact better with your partner or future ex-partner, right?
Yeah. Well, and I'm not just a divorce coach, I'm a relationship coach. So the cool thing is I do help people rebuild their marriage. And I do
Mm-hmm.
help people. So if they come to me and say, I have a client a few years ago, she came to me in the very first call, she said, I want a divorce. And she's happier in her current marriage now than she was when she called me. She repaired. She recognized, and through the work together, she recognized, I, in fact, don't want a divorce. I actually just need boundaries. I need to show up differently in this relationship. I need to communicate my needs more. And so people come like at this wit's end. And let's be real, lots of people who are coming to me are already ready for a divorce and I help them through that process. But there is this little sweet spot of I don't really want the divorce and that saying of the marriage is too bad to stay but too good to leave and they're just in this like trap of should I stay or should I go? I can help them through that process and then actually feel confident in their decision.
What are some things that women can look at in terms of, if they're maybe in a position where they feel like, it's too bad I don't want to stay, but too good I don't want to leave? What are some questions that women can start to ask themselves to begin the process of even piecing it apart?
I think that we have so much more of a knowing than we give ourselves credit for. So I like to do a quick activity where I say, do you want to leave this marriage? And they always pause and they're like, well, I don't know. I'm really scared and I have to worry about the kids and I don't know if I can afford it. And so then they start listing all of these reasons on like why they shouldn't get divorced, but they don't ever say, no, because I really, really love him. I mean, it's like tasks. And
Yeah.
so, okay, I go, okay, so that's your mind. That's your mind giving you all of the reasons. That's your fear getting in the way. That's your overwhelm. So if you really went back and I asked you that question without a lot of words, yes or no, do you want to leave this marriage? And you're safe here. And often they say yes. And they have been ignoring that intuition for so long that they don't even know if like what's true.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And filtering the noise, I think in even in my work, just working with women and manifesting a life that they want, like filtering the noise, the part of your brain that's logical, that's like listing all those tasks, is, I think, sometimes it can be a Herculean like task itself, because we've never been taught to do that. And so being
Yeah.
able to sit there and kind of just decipher, what do I want? That seems to be like such a hard question for women to answer, or people
Yeah.
to answer. Like, what do I really want?
Yeah. Well, because we're taught for so long that what we want doesn't matter. We have to kind of follow what our parents tell us to do or what our infrastructure of our community or what our best friends are doing or what's college the next path in line. And so they don't ever get to say, hey, you know what? I'm ready for a huge pivot. I want to move to Europe. I want to maybe not get married. I don't want to have kids, or I want to get divorced, or I want to leave this church. And the truth is we're never given that opportunity to actually like sit with our truth and be brave, where like maybe our parents told us like, well, you can't do that. What do you mean? And then they projected their fears onto us. And so, a lot of us women are like young people pleasers. And we were people pleasers as little girls. And then we grew up to be people pleasers as young women. And then we got married and we established that in our marriage. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh my gosh, I have lost myself my entire life. And now I'm miserable in this marriage. Like I kept creating the same problem for myself. And then marriage like actually made it the biggest stage.
Yeah. Yeah. It's raising the stakes.
Yeah.
Like the more time, but it's that, in my opinion, it becomes similar to the sunk cost fallacy. It's like, I've invested all this time. We built all of this together. We built this life together. We got married.
Hmm.
Everything that like has to be done in order to like dismantle this thing is like a big task. And like, am I willing to go through it? But the further you go, I mean, then kids are involved, and then it becomes like more and more of like an involved process.
Yeah.
And being able to just sit there and think, about in terms of what do I want, and not feeling like it's selfish, and
Right.
feeling like, how can this not only benefit me, but benefit, my partner? How can it benefit the kids? How can it benefit those who are around me from, this lesson about stepping into what do you really want?
And I tell them, they say, I don't know. And I'm like, yes, you do. Yes, you do. You do know what you want. And you're safe here to say that to me. You're allowed to have I don't care. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I can hold space for that. And then they get kind of emotional because they finally, for the first time, have been able to say it to somebody out loud. They're like, I've never said this out loud. I do want to leave my marriage, but I'm scared and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, so now we can address all of that now that we know what you really want.
Now, is there a difference or like I've heard this term conscious uncoupling a lot online. Is there an element of that? Is that different or is that like a piece of it? Like, how does that work or even play into it?
Yeah, conscious uncoupling is actually like, and I think there's a book around it and there's like an entire pathway. But if we just use that phrase instead of like that actual pathway, I believe that we should be able to do that. I do believe that you should be able to say to your partner, I love you and I'm thankful for the life that we have created. I'm thankful for the love that we once had. I'm thankful for our children and our home and our life and like growing up with you. But we are no longer happy. We're not sleeping together. We're not in the same bedrooms. We barely say hello or goodbye or good night. I think it's time for us to be able to like take this next chapter and move on without anger and without rage. Doesn't mean it won't be without sadness. Of course, it's going to be sad. It's the ending of something that was once very beautiful and that we had big hopes and dreams for a big future. But can we consciously uncouple? Can we lovingly separate?
Mm.
And yes, I do believe that that can be true, but we just have never been taught that as a society. Divorce ends up being um, angry and rage filled. But the reason I think that is because we let marriages go too far. We
Mm.
like, we knew it was over, and then we started having more resentment. And then we moved in different bedrooms, and then we had more resentment. Then we don't say hello and goodbye, and then we fight, and then if we could say that earlier on when we actually knew it, instead of having more time, the longer you stay in that toxic environment, the more you would like have hate towards one another versus like earlier on and saying, okay, I think this is better for us to move on.
Yeah. And too far is different for everyone.
Yeah.
It can be as far as, like you said, not even sleeping in the same beds, not even saying hello, basically just living two separate lives.
Yes.
It can also just be, still trying, but constantly butting heads or feeling like, we're just not connecting anymore. There's just something wrong. So
Yeah.
like I always want to bring it back to the consciousness behind the relationship, the awareness of what's going on underneath, and always self-reflecting and what do I want. It is this even able to go back to a place where I'm happy, or are we just so far apart? And the communication there has to be, I think, number one, not only with yourself, but with your partner, trying to figure out, like, do you even want to be here? Because like maybe I
Hmm.
want to be here, but you don't
Hmm.
want to be here. And being able to ask the question,
Yeah.
how can we even step into asking that question?
It just comes with honesty. So you married this person, you have seen them naked, you have had intimacy, you maybe birthed children with them, you have slept together every single night of your life, you shower together, all the things. And we can't sit across from them and say, what do you want out of this marriage? Like it it's mind blowing that we can share all parts of our lives, but then having a really difficult, tender conversation feels like extremely vulnerable.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is where we're going wrong. Like, you should be safe with them. You should be able to say, I am not happy in this marriage. Now they know that because then there's an argument and maybe there's abuse, maybe there's neglect, maybe they know that person has a temper and then that's going to get um be received in a negative way. Maybe he or she's going to get explosive and can't handle that. So every relationship is different and the capacity of the other partner. Like if you and I were having this conversation, we probably could have it in a balanced way, but one, because we're not charged, right? We don't have like
Mhm.
emotional connection. And two, because we have worked on our nervous system so much and our body and our mind and our soul, and we're not like this boiling pot. So when you have a really overwhelmed human, a woman who's like doing all things, holding the house together, being a parent, and a man who's like caring for the house, doing his stuff, and they come together, there's just like two boiling pots with white foam going down the sides versus like if you could catch yourself in a more balanced way. So the conversation ideally can be said and delivered in a loving manner, but sometimes we are both or both parties are just too unbalanced to be able to deliver it or receive it.
Yeah. And I remember when I was very young watching that movie, War of the Roses. I don't know if you remember that movie, where, this couple are just like so vindictive and violent towards one another. And
Mm.
they're just fighting in the middle of this dinner party that they're hosting. And, being like, oh, I'm never going to have a marriage like that. But then my first marriage was equally as vindictive and violent.
Oh,
And,
really?
but feeling like having had that normalized for me and not understanding like, oh, it's okay to remove yourself,
Hmm.
not even needing to have the conversation of, do you want to fix this? But also being able to stand in what I want and being able to move out.
Hmm.
Now, my question for you is, at what point did you think, oh, I want to help people who are in those situations. I want to help women who feel maybe it's not even that bad.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just, they're contemplating the divorce, or maybe they're contemplating trying to get back together, or whatever stage they're in. But what brought you to seeing, that women just want some guidance in this pivotal moment?
It it really was this beginning stages of when I went through a divorce. My friends would say, "Oh, my friend Andy's going through a divorce. Would you be willing to talk to her?" And so then, I would go have coffee with their friend and we would have these conversations. And I'm like helping them feel less alone. And it kind of organically happened like that. And then I personally hired a coach to just help me continue to move through my process. It's Christine, and you and I both have that shared connection. And then she's like, "Have you ever thought about coaching?" And I was like, I guess I kind of already am. And so then it expanded into like making this a business or a bigger platform. And originally, I didn't think that I wanted to just coach on divorce. I thought it was too heavy and I wanted to do more like empowerment and living your best life. And sometimes it kind of went into that. Unfortunately, or fortunately, my referral patterns just continued to be that. Like every time I'd help somebody, they would send me another friend that was in that journey. And then I would have another friend in that journey. And then when somebody called me and said, I want to get divorced, and I was able to help her repair her marriage. And I'm like, okay, so it's not just divorce, but it really is just relationship coaching. It's mostly women who are going through major transitions and peak moments in their marriage, whether they want to stay or they want to leave. That's entirely up to them. And they only know what's best for them, not me. But I will hold them and help them navigate either direction.
Oh, and firstly, I just want to say that I think that more women could use this type of coaching in order to really decide whether to stay or to go.
Yeah.
So, even just speaking with friends who are like, he's not a bad person, but I just don't know what to
Mhm.
do. Like there is no way for people to decide, like, is this just like the 7-year itch? Is this, just do I have a bit of ennui? Like, what is going on that it's reflecting in my marriage? Like,
Yeah.
is it a piece of my marriage, or is it, something happening within me that's like kind of manifesting in my marriage?
Hmm.
And so, like, I think what you're doing is definitely a needed service. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah.
And um, how have you seen your coaching practice evolving? I know you mentioned that like at the beginning it was like purely divorce and going into even just relationship repair, but have you noticed like trends happening or just the way in which women come to you just evolving, like what they are looking for versus like, what they really want? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. I have really become a lot more vulnerable on Instagram, and it has taken, I basically get 1,000 followers a week now, just really consistently. And I mean, it took me 4 years to get 600 followers, and now I get 1,000 a week because I'm showing up more authentically, and people are saying, "Oh my gosh, that is me. How are you in my mind? How are you in my brain?" And then just even last week, I posted one that was extremely vulnerable of that I was so low in my marriage, in my first marriage. I was so low that I would fantasize about anything happening to him. So I didn't have to leave. I didn't want to have to make the big statement. I didn't want to have to get divorced. I didn't want to have to share custody. And that was a huge wake up call because I, in fact, don't want the father of my children to die. I just wanted out of that marriage. And I didn't know that I was allowed to just leave it. And
Mm,
I made that post, and I've had no less than 150 DMs of women saying, "This is me. Thank you for saying that. I can't share, I can't comment. I'm not allowed to follow you." And so it shows that they are paralyzed
yeah.
in this reality. They're paralyzed. A they can't even like a post in fear of, and how the algorithm works is that, oh, Andy liked this divorce post. She must want to get divorced. Like
Yeah.
they're so secretive and
Yeah.
so worried about the judgment that they too are sitting there fantasizing about, like, I can't even like a post.
Mhm.
How am I ever going to take off a ring and sell the house? And so
Yeah.
because they can't do those things, they're like, I finally feel seen, I feel heard. And it's like I've had a real heaviness over the last couple of days because I'm like, so many people are resonating with this beautiful message, and I'm so honored to be able to help them. And so many people are resonating with this message, and it's heartbreaking that we are in this situation as a society, as a world, because people, it's all over the world, it's global messages, that people don't feel like they can just say, you know what, this is what's best for me. And I know that it isn't what the church wants or society wants, or maybe even my partner, but I'm allowed to use my voice and I'm allowed to advocate for myself. And so it's so difficult to, um, the more vulnerable you become, the more you relate to other people, and the more you realize that this is really a shared human experience for people who are struggling in their marriage. And I'm
Ah,
sad for that.
yeah. Do you think that if more awareness were giving towards certain aspects of marriage before we got married, like if we did more marriage counseling before we got
Yes.
married, before we said the ideas, do you think that more people would have happier marriages or more people wouldn't get married? Or what do you think about that?
I mean, probably both. I have a course designed for couples entering into marriage. It's called the Modern Marriage Blueprint, and my goal was basically with my 4 children in mind. How do I help them be better prepared? And if the only 4 people that ever take the course are my 4 kids, then it's a win. How do I
Yeah.
help them be better prepared? Because we are wildly underprepared for marriage. We do not know how to be in relationship with somebody for decades, for 50 years, for 60 years.
Yeah.
And it's before you've paid oftentimes before you've paid a mortgage or a tax bill or had a death of a parent or had some sort of illness. It's before you've even had these like major life things. And so I do think that people should be better prepared going into marriage and
Mhm.
also be able to say, whoa, we looked at these like big platforms, these sections, and we are really disconnected. And the brave thing to do is to call the marriage off or the wedding off before we get married, before we have children. Like people will often say, like in Instagram, because people are quick to make statements, they'll say, you should have chosen better. Well, I wish I would. Yes. Yes, thank you. You're right. I wish I would have. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like, but you don't know what you don't know, especially when you're young.
Yeah. So I want to bring it back to you, if that's okay.
Sure.
Do you think you have any lessons that you would have liked to have known before your first marriage or even before this happy one?
Oh, yeah. I mean, definitely before my first marriage, I saw red flags and I ignored them because I was sure that things would get better when. I was like, oh, it will be okay. Once he gets this different job, once we get into that house, once we get married, then things will get better. And for me, I wish that I had more discernment and more confidence in myself at that age for me to say, gosh, maybe we should slow things down. Maybe we should
Mhm.
just wait. Maybe, and not be in such a rush to do what everybody else is doing and get married on the timeline of Midwestern girls. And so, yes, for me, I wish that I would have known that and given myself more confidence and the ability to have more discernment.
Yeah. And I think for many young women who get married that young, that's the
Yeah,
key for
right,
both, not just young
right.
women. But I even in my marriage, it was very much like I saw the red flags. I saw him waving them right in my face, and I'm like, no, it'll be better. It'll
Hmm.
get better when. Always
Yes.
with it'll get better when. And
Hmm.
there were no children from that relationship, and I thank God. But it could have continued down that path. It could have, like we were talking about, going further and further down the rabbit hole, further entanglements, further, ways in which, we could have been, more intertwined in our
Right.
life. It would have been harder to leave.
Yeah.
So, going into a little bit about, um, so working through different aspects of the relationship. So it's not just about divorce, right? I know I've been leaning into this a little bit is because to me it's like super fascinating that this even exists. But the relationship part of it that I think also we tend to like gloss over, like you said, it's about knowing beforehand, what you're getting into, but also the fact that we don't really, I don't, from what I've seen, it's really not common anymore to have role models in marriage. To see couples who've lasted 40, 50, 60 years, like you were saying. And
Yeah.
how can we start to find people and mentors? I don't even know, but like looking at relationships that not only have lasted, but are thriving. What can we like look for in couples to be like, hey, can I ask you a question about your marriage? So that we know that we're getting information from like a good source.
It's really hard because that's going to involve people being extremely transparent.
Mm.
And and you'll get the old, oh, marriage is hard. We just didn't quit. Well, okay, is that true? I mean, I know they didn't quit, but did one person totally die in their marriage for 30 years? And were they sleeping in separate beds? Were they actually happy? Was one person happy and the other person was not? Like, you really would have to take two people into like this confidential room
Oh.
and allow them to like say the truth and then find out if both people were mutually happy. Um, and so I don't know how you get mentors. I am in a very loving relationship. I am in a very loving marriage, my second marriage. We've been married now for for 7 years. And I talk a lot about that. And so I want to be really careful that people aren't gaslit into believing that their marriage, they just didn't try harder. So sometimes
Mhm.
my husband's name is Grant. Grant and I are very compatible. We have done a lot of self work on ourselves and we're balanced and we both have had failed first marriages. So we came into this with more intention. And so it's unfair to tell everybody else, well, we just work on it. We just love harder. We just try. We just won't give up on one another. That's really hard because that's the very reason that women are feeling like they can't get out of their marriage. Maybe I should just try harder.
Mm.
Maybe the swearing and the abuse and the alcoholism and the neglect and the infidelity, maybe I should just try harder. And so really it's less about like to each their own. If couple A has made it for 50 years, good for them. But I don't want anybody to feel like, oh, they did it because they worked really hard. They weren't married to that person that you're married to. So would they have been able to just work on it if they were married to the person that you're married to? And so I have some women tell me some very sad, horrific things. Things like letting the tire air out of the tires of her car because he's mad and she has to figure out a way to scramble and pick up the kids from school. Like that's abuse.
Yeah.
And she's like, I just don't know if it's bad enough. Like, yeah, I think it's bad enough. Barricading the door, swearing at her, pushing her up against the wall. But it's not a bruise, so these I want to be very careful that everybody gets to decide if their marriage is healthy and strong. And it's
Yeah.
not mine or yours to decide what is right for them, even if their grandma and grandpa and their parents just worked harder to make it work. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I come from a culture where, sometimes cheating was tolerated,
Yeah.
alcoholism tolerated, abuse tolerated. I just met a woman whose husband was dealing drugs and she couldn't leave him because they had
Yeah.
8 children together. And it was like
Hmm.
this thing that snowballed. And then like seeing the things that culturally are like thrust upon us versus what our families thrust upon us, what our experiences thrust
Yeah.
upon us, because we might also be throwing in the towel too soon. Like we might not be trying hard enough because like that I experienced that before. Never gonna, like, you're not gonna change, I'm gonna go. And also addressing, like, being able to trust and discern like different people and how they interact in the relationship. But like it's just such a tough dynamic for, I mean, for me, and what I've witnessed and what I've seen, even in my coaching, is that the romantic relationship, is the hardest. I want to be very clear, is the hardest relationship to navigate out of
Yeah.
all the relationships that you have. And I think it's just great that we've got people like you to help out.
Well, thank you. It's an honor.
So, Molly, I would love, if anyone feels called to find you, to chat you up, to see what your services are all about, how can they get in contact with you? What do you have coming up? What projects do you have coming up? Let us know.
Okay. The best place to find me is either on my website is www.mollyrubesh.com or on Instagram, my name, Molly_Rubesh. You can DM me. I make it a priority to message people back individually if they message me. You don't get my AI bot. And the other thing is I'm building a community on School, which is a platform outside of Instagram, outside of social media, because I really believe after, especially after that last post, that people need a safe place where they can come and be anonymous and they can get full support without the judgment of their friends or family, not feeling like they can't post, they can't comment, they can't like. So it's a really contained community that will keep you safe. And so, if you would be interested in that, you can reach out to me on Instagram. I'm building it right now, so I don't have the actual link for it, but you can reach out to me on Instagram and I'll send you a link for the waiting list and hopefully have that live. Well, definitely by the time that this airs. So, you can find, and actually, you know what, Andy, maybe we can put it in the show notes when it's live.
Absolutely.
So, we'll put it in the show notes
Absolutely.
by the time this goes live. And I would love to have you guys join me. If you're struggling with this and you need a place to feel safe, seen, and heard and supported, I'd come over and join the school community.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Molly. This conversation has been amazing. And yes, everybody, if you are feeling called, not that you might feel like you need a divorce, but maybe you're questioning your relationship, reach out to her. Having a conversation with Molly, she just has such a warm and inviting presence about her.
Thank
And
you.
thank you so much for being on the show, Molly. Um, and guys, please like, subscribe, share this with anyone you think who might benefit from this conversation. And we will see you next week. Bye.